change and stuff. So we'll read that interview. But on my ride home, I listened to Fradd, and Brian Holdsworth was on there with him today. And it's a really good interview. Like, oh God.
I hear Holdsworth held his feet to the fire a
little bit. And Holdsworth was pretty honest. I mean, he was very careful what he said, but I pulled a clip up. You want to just pull the clip up? It's not too long. But there's two parts to this. We'll listen to the first clip. I thought the conversation in general was just very honest. I really liked it, man. It made the ride home fly by. Thank you, Tyler.
It's a long one, right?
What'd you say?
The interview overall is a long one, right?
It's a long one. They start off talking about just how they got to know each other. It was pretty cool because you got to hear how Matt actually winds up getting the gig at Catholic Answers, and then eventually starts his podcast and stuff. Like it was a set of events that just happened that just seemed like God had his hand in the whole thing, you know. But
let his trad flag fly. I like that one.
Yeah, he did. Holdsworth really. Listen, what we're about to play, you're going to. All right, so I'm going to say more than these two guys said. They were very cautious. I'm going to say a little bit more, but I really did appreciate the honesty from both of them. Matt had a lot of good things to say in the interview too. So let's just play this real quick.
Brandon, we're stealing from Pipes with Aquinas because they steal from us.
I mean, they steal bits from us. We're giving them credit at least.
Right.
We're at least giving them credit.
We started going to Latin Mass because it's a fairly barren landscape of liturgy where I live. I hear about these great Novus Ordo masses down here in the United States where there's lots of cultural elements, right?
Be ready to pause.
They just don't exist.
Right. So be ready to pause, because right off the bat, I have to say, I feel like he's being a little politically correct there. I think he knows it's a political wasteland out there. I mean, a liturgical wasteland.
Liturgical wasteland, yeah.
It is a liturgical wasteland. I mean, you might find, if there's a dozen unicorn masses in the entire United States. Remember when Anthony was enamored with Matt Fradd? I remember. I remember. That was such a good episode of South Park. So he's being politically correct here, because if there's a dozen really good Novus Ordos in the entire United States, that's a lot.
I know of two, and they're both 15 minutes apart in the Twin Cities.
I don't know of one in my diocese.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm
in both those parishes offer weekly if not daily Latin masses. So
they're both forms masses.
Yeah.
Both forms parishes. So the even Novus Ordo parishes that do the TLM aren't exactly unicorns. Yeah, Don said that. So I agree. I think a lot of times we have to speak in language that's like, look, we're not, because I think his point in saying that is, I'm not saying the Novus Ordo is invalid, guys, when it's celebrated properly. And we would say that too.
Todd, do you know what I would look like if I wore a vet? I would look like G.K. Chesterton. You know what I mean?
Listen, the most dressed up we'll ever be is our Schneider interview. You're not seeing anything more than that, guys. I got news for you. That is the best of the best you will get from Robin. Yep. All right, let's keep playing. I know it drives me nuts when people play clips and they interrupt it every 2 seconds. So,
well, we usually try to drive people nuts. So
that's true.
It's a great expression of our faith. But where I live, it's like, it's the breaking bread variety, and it's not even breaking bread up like current breaking bread. It's like 1980s breaking bread. Like we haven't even got the new subscription yet. And it's all boomers leading all the way, and God bless the boomers. I love them, but their cultural instincts aren't great. So we started going to Latin Mass, and shortly after going, so we'd gone for maybe a month. I remember we were driving there, and we've got all the kids packed in our big Catholic-sized van, and I was afraid to ask them this question because I thought I knew what the answer was going to be. But I was like, hey, so we've been going to this Latin Mass for a little while. Do you guys want to keep going to this, or do you want to go back to our old parish? And they triumphantly cheering, fists in the air, Latin Mass. And I was like, what? Okay, cool. And then around the same time too, my my fifth oldest now, who was he was maybe 1 or 2 at the time, he was getting really restless at one point. And so I picked him up, and there was a cloud of incense just floating over us at this one point, and it caught the rays of the stained glass just right. So it was like really apparent right where we were standing. And he was down in the pew, down in the nether worlds, where in the shadows, where who knows what goes on down there. When I picked him up into the light, he's sort of like, oh, look. Then he goes, prayers. I was like, yeah, buddy, that's exactly what that is, right? At a Novus Ordo, like, yeah, maybe things are in the vernacular. Maybe they're more accessible in a lot of respects, but they're not accessible to a 1-year-old, let alone a 10-year-old a lot of the time. The language that we use in our prayers is very high ecclesiastical language. The homilies typically, even at the best of times, aren't relatable to most kids. But that sensory experience is intuitive to their human nature. And even if they don't understand the explicit stuff, they do understand this stuff. And it's something.
Okay, so the couple of times my kids have had to go to a Novus Ordo for whatever reason, whether it's for whatever reason, if they had to go because they had some event and they couldn't make the times for the Latin Mass, they come home and they're like, that was dreadful. Yeah. So this past Sunday, I remember a couple of weeks ago, I told the story of my wife's girlfriend that had the problem with the drugs.
Yeah.
Okay. So my wife's girlfriend she OD'd. It was like this crazy thing that happened.
Right.
She lost her husband left, her kids got taken away, everything. Yeah. She came to Latin Mass with us this past Sunday. That was her first time ever going. And she wept through the entire thing. She said afterwards, she felt like she was transported to heaven, hearing the choir singing. She said it felt like she was listening to angels singing. Like the sensory experience this girl had was overwhelming to the point where she was in tears. And the thing is, we kind of don't talk about the Latin Mass that much because you assume most people have already heard about it or been exposed to it. But a lot of people are checking out our channel, right? And I also saw Donna again, who we saw in Manhattan.
On our channel or in person?
Remember we met Donna in Manhattan when we went?
But I'm saying, did you see her again on the channel?
I saw her at Mass on Sunday.
Okay. That's
so she, from listening to us, decided to go check out a Latin Mass. There was another guy who we had an interaction on Twitter. Turns out he goes to the parish that my wife went to RCIA in.
Oh, really?
Which was abysmal. Horrible. Okay.
Is so we had a little denied at
multiple times, right? Yeah, we had a conversation on Twitter and I was like, hey, you should come to St. Matthew's in Dix Hills every first and third. I'm walking out of Mass and he comes up to me and he goes, Anthony. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, this is my first time coming. Thank you so much for telling me they had this. It's important to bring these conversations up and still talk about them once in a while. I know that sometimes they feel like we have them ad nauseum, and it's like how many times
we don't talk about liturgy too often. Actually,
I don't think we do, right? But hearing this conversation, you got to hear the end of it because what he says at the end is it broke my heart when you really think about what he says towards the end.
We just want to bring this one up here.
Went to an ad orientem, half English, Latin Novus Ordo at college and still felt deficient. The theology and text of the Novus Ordo itself is the problem. So you won't. Okay. So when you go to a Mass like that, I have attended one. When you go to one, you're not nitpicking. At least you're not upset the whole time. You still do. There is still something lacking.
Yeah, definitely.
There's something lacking. But you're not nitpicking where you're just like cringing through the Mass. There's a lot of things at the Novus Ordo that are very difficult to sit through after you've been exposed to the traditional liturgy for so long. So, all right, go back. Let's just hear towards the end. And then later on, Matt asked him about Traditionis Custodes. I should have cut that clip too. If I knew we were going to talk about this tonight, I just wanted to get something up.
Something they can interact with and they can respond to and they can identify and they can think about afterwards and they can imagine, and it fills their mind's eye. And that's the thing I realized at that point. And I didn't have any perception of this until my kids' response to it. And I was like, they get this. Like I get it because I'm thinking about it rationally, but they just get it. It just speaks to them. And we've lost that as a church. And there's no, like, if to whatever degree we're engaged in culture conflict today, or the culture wars, or that's a turnoff for a lot of people. But we do need to be influencing the culture if we're going to be evangelizing. But we can't do it without a culture of our own. If we're just trying to piggyback off of the existing culture, people will be like, yeah, you're just posing. You're just not the real thing. You're just trying to hijack this thing that we already have. We don't need to get it from you. And we don't really want your creed either. So, because
okay, so what they go on to talk about is how, let's use my cousin's parish for an example, where we met Todd, Enoch, and Eddie all went to that, right?
Yep.
They have this vibrant community down there that is, they said after Mass, they get out of Mass and you'll just have the men outside talking for over an hour, the kids all playing in the field, the wives all talking with each other.
They generally just naturally bring food for after Mass.
Yeah, to all hang out together. They have this unique Catholic culture surrounding this liturgy. There's something about this liturgy that forms this Catholic culture. The men have a men's group. They do once a month. They do something together. These guys do like a perpetual Exodus 90, not as severe, but they all hold each other accountable. They're constantly praying for something specific as a group, constantly sacrificing something together as a group, holding one another to a higher standard. This is basically the Benedict option that they have at that parish.
Yeah.
So Matt goes in and asks Brian what he thinks of Traditionis. And when you really think about what they did by taking this away, right? These communities that people are driving from all over the place to meet up with each other. It's such an awful thing. Like the culture that we are up against.
The Vatican killed the whole communities.
Whole community, vibrant communities where these men and women and their children had a chance to combat this evil culture that is trying to swallow them up. The way you do that is by forming these Catholic communities and having your children have Catholic friends and raising them in a Catholic environment. Now, when you break a community like that apart, it is so, it's evil. I don't care what anybody says. It's evil to do that. You can use whatever excuse you want and say, well, you know, they were using this as a rallying point to go against Francis and things like that, but that's not what they were doing.
The more we see from Francis, the more clear it should be that he did it specifically to kill the communities. He did it because these are the people that are opposing his program of destroying the faith. I mean, the man just had Sister what's her name from New Ways Ministry at the Vatican today promoting LGBT bullshit when he kills whole Latin Mass communities. It's just, and then people want to explain it away and call you crazy.
People that write that off with him meeting with her and New Ways Ministry. I mean, New Ways Ministry was banned.
1997, 99, something like that.
So it was banned under JP2, and that ban continued under Benedict.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't changed a single thing about the things they teach. They were banned because they lead Catholics into confusion about what the church teaches. It was deemed unacceptable to have this ministry, if you could call it that. It's horrific. And for Francis to be posing for these photo ops while this is going on, it's just the whole show Matt did with Brian was really good. It was an honest discussion. They were giving like really good ways to keep your children Catholic and things you could do with your family. I thought it was one of the best pint shows I've seen in a long time. And it was really great to see Brian actually say some of these things, because I don't typically watch Brian Holdsworth because he does like short videos by himself. Usually
it's just not my style.
Right. It has nothing to do with him. I typically I enjoy a conversation more than I enjoy a single person going on screen and telling you something. I just do. I enjoy listening to a conversation. So hearing him and Matt have this conversation today was, I thought it was amazing. Just the honesty of it, and just him saying like, listen, look, like what our bishops are doing. And the thing is, I'm fortunate enough to have a bishop that kind of just ignores a lot of the stuff. But for any bishop that wants to actually follow that motu proprio, it involves massacring a community like that. And to me, that just, I can't see anything in that is not evil. I mean, I hesitate to use harsh language like that, I guess, but it just seems so twisted and wrong. I mean, you're taking the one thing that could equip these families to let their children go into the world without losing their soul and ripping it away.
Yep.
It just seems so crazy. So, all right. Yeah. If you guys haven't seen that, definitely go check that interview out. It was really, really good. The other, before we even get into the next topic, we have a couple of things we're going to do on locals tonight that we can't do on